Welcome to today's yoga class. Today we're going to need the chair, a towel, and your yoga block, and of course your water. All right, so let's come to a standing position. And to start, we're just going to place our feet a little wider than hip distance in our Tadasana or mountain pose. Bringing our hands heart center, gently resting our thumb against our heart center. And just pressing our hands together, soft little micro bend in the knees. So just as it takes two hands to create the pressure in the upper body, it takes strength and stability for a joint to be able to support the body. So today we're going to be focusing a little bit on that strength and support in that mobility of the joint. Continuing to press dynamically against each other, pulling the shoulder blades down the back. Feeling a little bit of a burning sensation in the chest muscles, maybe even some in the shoulder. Continuing to breathe. Nice steady breath. Two more breaths here. Excellent, and release. So sometimes it's a lot easier to start here in the upper body. We are moving to the lower body, but we start in the upper body because we're used to being able to do that. We're used to like pushing a door or pulling something towards us to create that dynamic tension. In the lower body, sometimes we don't remember how to do that quite so easily. So today we're going to be focusing on the lower body using our props. So go ahead and grab a drink. I'm going to come over to that chair. Bring this a little bit closer. So we're using the chair right now for some stability. So turning that chair. And we're going to take a block and put it in between our calves. You can't see my calves. So taking you down here. You're going to take that block and put it in between the calves. So our feet are just barely turned out. So find what is a comfortable position for you. If you're comfortable standing with your feet in, as you can see, that makes my knees knock in. So my personal stance is in this position, slightly turned out. Ideally, that second toe lines up with the middle of your kneecap and with your ASIS, the bony part on your hips. So from here, we're going to spread our toes, put our first, second, and third toe down, keeping our fourth and fifth toe lifted. So we're just going to stand here for a moment. So we're firming up that lateral side of the calf and just feeling that tone as we hold that together. So we're not squeezing just yet. We're just holding that block there while we're firming up that lateral calf. A few more breaths, keeping those toes lifted, really engaging those lateral peroneals. A few more breaths. And if you are wanting to track your workout and you haven't already, hit your go. You can hit start on your measurement there. Excellent. Releasing those toes down now. We're going to add that component of squeezing the block. So we've still got that lateral activation in the calf. Now we're engaging that middle calf. So you should kind of feel a little bit of a turning out almost and lift through those arches. So we've got a little bit of isometrics going on, as well as that firming, pulling up of the fascia, relaxing the rest of those legs. Two more breaths. Excellent, and release. Taking the block out, just kind of walking around, feeling. We want the sensation of the fascia moving up and around, just like when you slide a sleeve up your arm. So we're kind of integrating some of that change and even walking backwards a little bit, feeling that more stretchy through the calves, really articulating through the ankle, toe ball, heel, the heel, toe. All right, so we're gonna move up the leg, taking your block back in between the calves. Find that perfect placement for your body, for your feet. And we're gonna start by spreading out the toes, lowering that first, second, and third toe, keeping that fourth and fifth lifted, gently placing them down, squeezing the block. So we're gonna come here, feeling your hands on your quads, engage your quads. So think of pulling your kneecaps up. So you feel the firmness in the lower calf and the front of your quads. Holding here, trying to relax the upper back, the hamstrings, just feeling the firmness in your quad. If you're not sure if you do, you can tap on it if you're having a hard time getting that to come on board. And we are in that chair pose with our body. Still feeling that firmness in all compartments of the calf and that quad. A few more breaths here. Excellent. Remove that block. Once again, we're going to walk around. And you can just walk in place if you feel like it. But walking around that forward and back really helps integrate that stretch that we want to achieve in those fascial lines that we've been engaging. And now we're incorporating that together. All right, coming back into that position again. You have that chair there if you need it for your balance. I'm going to show you from the side this time. So coming into that chair pose, chair for balance, placing the block in between the calf. So lifting the toes, putting that first, second, and third toe down, firming up that lateral thigh, slowly placing the toes down, squeeze those blocks in between the calf. Now firming up the quad, pulling the kneecap up. If you need to tap it to get it on board, tap that. And now with the effort, imagine bringing your heels, so digging in, imagine bringing your heels up towards your bottom. Feel the back of the legs firm up. So we've got firming the lateral calf, firming in the inside calf, firming in the top of the quad, and in those hamstrings. Feeling the firmness in those lower limbs. Two more breaths here. Excellent. And releasing that block from the legs, walking around. So this next one, I do encourage you to get your chair. I'm going to have it turned to a slight angle, and you'll grab your towel. So your towel, your body towel, you'll have it folded in half, top to bottom, and then you'll bring it in, creating the seams down the middle here. So think of this as a space for your tailbone to be comfortably placed, and then we'll fold that in half and then in half again. You can roll that up if you prefer, but folding it works just as well. And we're going to sit on that so that space is right where that tailbone is. So you've got that extra little space there. So placing that there. So this brings us close to that chair position. So we're kind of emanating, replicating that, but we're being supported here with the chair. So we're going to take our block, bring it underneath us here, adjusting onto those hips because it may have slid you back a little bit. All right, so imagine we're in that chair position. So we're bringing the toes up, spreading all of those toes. Moving first, second, and third toe down, feeling the firmness in that lateral calf. Slowly putting those toes down, maintaining that firmness, squeezing the block together. So we've got that whole lower calf nice and toned. Now pulling that quad up, feeling that firmness in the front of the quad. And now pushing the heel towards the glutes to engage the hamstrings. So from here, we're going to cross our wrists, press them, taking the flesh, pressing against, I'm going to roll the flesh underneath, and then gently pressing away right in the middle of the quad to separate that and open up the back of the hip. And we're going to rest our arms on our quads. So taking your flesh, rolling it underneath, and then relaxing the upper body onto those legs. So feel the back of the hip begin to open. Still maintaining that firmness. Don't let the legs come apart. So we've got the adduction, bringing it together at the calf, and the abduction at the upper hip. Feeling that opening in the back. A couple more breaths here. And release. Excellent. Releasing that block coming up. So we are going to come off of that chair. We're going to do that same thing. Have that chair nearby. Go ahead and walk that off. Feel that change in the back of the hips. So before we come back to that, let's grab a drink. Muscles work best when they're hydrated, as do the fascia. And it's a lot of fascial strengthening that we're working through here, as well as that muscle in that isometric spot. All right, so from here, I'm going to kind of show you from the angle, from the side here. Block between the calf. We're in that nice chair pose. Lifting the toes. First, second, and third toes down. Flaring out that fourth and fifth toe, feeling the firmness in that lateral calf. Squeezing that block together. Firmness in the lower extremity here. Now, engage that top quadricep. Pulling that knee up. And now pulling the heel towards the glutes. If we're trying to pull the heel in and cross the wrist, take that flesh, roll it back, lowering the forearms onto the thighs, pressing back. Feeling the back of the hips open, flattening the back. Two more breaths here. Excellent. And slowly releasing the block to the floor. We're going to lean or straighten through the legs as we come forward into a forward fold, taking the hands to the back of the hips, slightly bending the knees as we slowly come up, opening up the chest, gently pressing the fascia down the back. Excellent. So walking it around, taking that fascia for a bit of a drive, right? Test drive. And just notice what you notice in those lower extremities. Excellent. So let's take our chair and we're going to use that same activation pattern to move through some lunging. So we're going to come to the chair and step back into a plank position, bringing that right foot forward onto the right side of your chair. You're going to pivot that back foot. So we're in that nice warrior two positioning with the body using that chair. So we're going to come down to our forearms. So we're going to start with that same principle as we did before, lifting all of the toes, spreading them out, putting that first, second, and third toe down, firming up that lateral side of the calf. And then putting those toes down, still feeling that firmness in the lateral side of the calf. Now I want you to imagine squeezing those calves together as if squeezing that block, bringing those muscles on board, creating that firmness here. Now pull your kneecaps up. Without pulling your hips up, pull your kneecaps up to feel that firmness in the front of your quad. And now pulling your heels towards your glutes. So feeling that firmness in the hamstring of that front leg, that front right leg, and the firmness coming up onto that inner thigh. Now in your mind, imagine having those wrists crossed, pressing the flesh back and under. So feel the back of the hip open as you gently mobilize that flesh, and then that pressure against those inner thighs, firming up the entire lower extremities. Continue to maintain that firmness. You may even feel like you can go a little deeper, letting that front right knee float forward and over towards the pinky toes. Still maintaining that firmness. 2 more breaths. On your next exhale, taking those hands to the chair, coming up and away. We're going to bring that leg back and then just pedal the feet, noticing the difference in those legs just because we had the position of them, one in that sagittal plane and one in that frontal plane. So taking those feet forward, come into that forward fold, bringing the hands to the back of the hips, squeezing those shoulder blades back and down as we come up from that forward fold. Gently pressing the hips down, feeling that flesh mobilize across that sacrum. A lot of times we experience low back pain because the tissue is tight around the hips and the sacral area. So just wringing it out, if you will, with the isometric work that we're doing. All right, releasing, kind of taking it around for a walk, if you will. Again, noticing the difference in those legs. All right, I'm gonna turn here. Let's grab a drink to hydrate before we move to that left lead. Excellent. All right, so coming into that plank position to start. Bringing that right foot forward, turning that back foot. Turn that nice warrior 2-ish position, coming over the chair. Excellent. So from here, let's start with those feet. Lifting the toes, spreading them out, putting that first, second, and third toe down, keeping that fourth and fifth toe lifted, firming up, toning up that lateral calf. Slowly put that down. And now, with that same intensity as before with the block, between the calf, imagine it there, pressing, firming up the inside of the calf as well. Moving up the leg, pull the quad, pull the kneecap up, engaging that quadriceps muscle. And now think of pulling the heels towards your glutes. Feel a little bit of an activation in the back of the thigh of your left leg and maybe in the adductor of your right. And now imagine crossing those hands over, pressing against the inner thigh as you rotate the flesh, using your body just slightly to move that flesh back. Feel that opening in the back of the hip. Feel that pressure against the inner thigh. Feeling that firmness in all the lower extremities here. You may feel like you can go a little deeper, floating that left knee out and over those pinky toes, coming into a little bit of a deeper stretch. Still allowing that opening in the back of the hip. Couple more breaths here. And on your next exhale, release that tone, that tension in the legs, coming up onto the hands, rotating back out of that heel, bringing that left leg back, pushing back into that down dog, walking those feet forward. Soft bend in the knees, bringing the hands to the back of the hips, pulling the shoulder blades back and down and pushing through your feet as you come up. Once again, we're pressing that flesh down the back, opening up that chest. And releasing that down, walking around, feeling that change in that fascia. Even walking backwards, toe ball heel. And then heel ball toe coming forward. Just noticing what you notice. And let's grab a drink before we move on. Excellent. So coming back to that first side. So coming into that nice down dog position. So pressing down into the chair and then up into the chair. Just actively engaging some of those, the fascia in that upper body. We're just going to bend the left knee to feel that stretch down that right leg. Keeping that foot on the floor. And straightening that leg, coming forward into that plank, shoulders back and down, soft bend in the elbows. So here we are actively pushing into the floor and away from the floor, pulling our belly button in and up. So in towards our spine, up towards our head. Hands are nice and spread wide, fingers wide. Feeling our weight evenly distributed across the palm, from the pinky to the pointer finger to the thumb. Two more breaths. Excellent. Pressing away from the chair towards the ceiling and then away from the chair to push ourselves back into that nice down dog position. So we're going to bend the right knee, pressing back through the left. Feeling all of that fascia stretch down that left leg now. 2 more breaths here. Excellent. As you inhale, coming forward into that plank position. Now, this time I'm going to encourage you to wipe off your palms and gently turning your hands out to the edge of your chair so you can wrap those fingers around the chair. And I just want you to separate those feet just a little bit and just notice what you notice in this position. Pulling the shoulder blades back and down, soft little bend in the elbows, squeezing those shoulder blades towards the spine, pulling that belly button in towards the spine, up towards the head, holding here. Feeling the pinky toes in this position as well. Firming up the calf, firming up the quads and the hamstrings. Excellent. Pressing back, turning those hands onto that seat, walking the feet in just a little bit, pressing down into the chair and up towards the chair, pressing ourselves back into that down dog. So this is a great way to stretch the fascia without loading too much of the body weight into those tissues, especially if your shoulders are sore or achy or just don't feel like you've got that right range of motion. So we're working those fascial lines on the front and the back of the body. Feeling that stretch across the palm, opening up that hand. Maybe even think of starfish fingers, really spreading them out. Or jazz hands, whichever works for you. Excellent. We're going to slowly walk our fingertips to the floor, pushing our weight into the heel. So that same thing, pressing into the chair and towards the chair, we're pressing into the floor and then up towards the chair, feeling that stretch down the posterior side of the body. Allowing our ribs to rest on our thighs. Our nice little forward fold here. In your next exhale, soften the knees, bringing the hands to the thighs, pressing up slightly, bringing the hands to the back of the hips, pulling the shoulder blades towards the spine, and then slowly coming up gently, tucking that tailbone under as you press your flesh down the back of your thighs, back of your hips. Just kind of pedaling those legs, feeling the tissue mobilize underneath your hands. And then let's go ahead and walk it off. Feeling that fascia stretch across those muscles as we walk. Maybe even notice whether or not you feel like you can articulate a little bit more, a little easier into the ankles, the knee, and the hip, maybe even across the back. All right, before moving on, let's grab a drink. All right, so we're going to move into that side body. So coming back to that chair, stepping back into that plank position, we're going to bring that right foot forward onto that outside edge of that chair, dropping that foot down. So we're back in that warrior two base. We're going to bring our body over the chair. So let's firm up the legs, starting from the toes. Spread them out, lift them up, put down that first, second, and third toe, firming up that lateral compartment of the calf, and then gently setting it down. Bringing the inner calf on board. Imagine squeezing them together as if that block was there. And now pulling the kneecap up, firming at the front of the quad, and then bringing the heels towards the glute, or towards the glutes, firming at those hamstrings. Now imagine crossing those hands, pressing and rolling the flesh away, then pressing against the inner thigh. So we've got that nice opening happening across the back of the hip. So from there, we're going to put our weight into our right hand. We're going to circle sweep our left hand up and over, pinky side up, reaching up and over. If your chair is optimally placed, you may feel like you can grab the edge of that chair and give yourself just a little bit of rotation as you press into. So we're in a variation of our side angle to open up into that side body. Think of rainbowing those ribs on that left side up towards the ceiling. And think of gently pushing up against something with that left pinky. And inhale as you slowly come up. Releasing the tension in the legs, bringing the hands back to the chair, coming into that nice lunge position, shoulders back and down, spreading those hands out into the little starfish or jazz hands, and coming back into that plank position, pulling the belly button up towards the spine, shoulder blades back and down, belly button up towards the head. Holding here, feeling all those toes, and then pressing down into the chair and away from the chair, adding a little bit more firming in the lower extremities, all the way up through that body. And pushing back, pushing the hips back, feeling the heels into the floor, into that down dog. Pressing down into the chair and towards the back of the chair. Once again, checking in with the body, pulling those shoulder blades down your back. On your exhale, release those hands to the floor. Once again, pressing into the floor, pressing back, continuing to feel that stretch down the legs. Relaxing the upper body, bending the knees, walking the hands to the top of the quads, coming up slightly, pressing the hands into the legs, and then bringing the hands to the back of the hips, firming up those shoulders, squeezing the shoulder blades towards the spine, and then gently tugging the tailbone under as we come on up, pressing the flesh down the back. Couple more breaths here. Excellent. Slowly releasing and taking it out for a spin, rocking it around, rolling those shoulders a few times. Once again, paying attention to the articulation through your feet. Noticing what you notice. Notice if it feels a little more fluid, more stretchy. And then we'll grab a drink before moving to the other side. Excellent. I'm going to turn my chair here. All right. So we are in that 4 points position. Utilizing that chair, we're going to step back into that nice down dog position. Looking up between the hands, stepping that left foot to the outside edge of that chair, coming up, turning that right foot, coming down to the forearms. All right, let's start with those toes, lifting up through the toes, pressing that first, second, and third toe into the floor, firming up that lateral side of the calf, and then slowly placing those toes down, engaging those muscles as if squeezing that block between the calves, firming up that lower limb, moving our attention to our kneecap, pulling our kneecap up, firming up the quadriceps, and now imagine pulling the heels towards the glutes, firming up those hamstrings. And now that crossing of the wrists, rolling the flesh back, opening up the back of the hip, pressing against the inner thigh, allowing that left knee to kind of float out past the pinky toe, continuing to feel that opening across the low back, across the sacrum, pressing into that left arm on that chair. I'm going to circle sweep that right arm up and over, pinky side up. Make sure you're not hanging out in that joint, gently pressing away, internally supported, rainbowing those ribs up. And then imagine pressing out and away with that right hand, feeling that firmness all along that right side of the body. If you feel so inclined, you can use the edge of the chair to give you just that little bit more rotation. Still pressing up, rotating, everything firmed up. A couple more breaths here. Excellent. Releasing all of that tone, circle sweeping that arm around, coming into that nice lunge position, firming up those hands, rolling those shoulder blades back and down, drying off those hands if you need to, having those nice starfish fingers, coming back out of that lunge position into that nice plank. Feeling all of those toes, feeling the pinky toes, knee and hips facing the floor. Make sure you're not dropping into the back. Nice and firm, shoulders back and down. Pull that belly button towards the spine and then up towards the crown of the head. Little softening in the elbows if you're coming down into that push-up. Two more breaths here. Excellent. Push down into the chair, into the floor, and then up towards the back of the chair, pushing ourselves back into that nice down dog position. Separating the feet just a little bit, making them a little wider. A few more breaths here. And on your next exhale, release one hand to the floor, then the other, pushing into the floor and then away from that chair. To that nice forward fold. And soften those knees, walking those hands back up onto the tops of the thighs. lengthening through the spine, pulling those shoulders back and down, and then walking those hands to the back of the hips, coming all the way up from that forward fold, pressing that flesh down the back, across the sacrum, across those attachments in the hip. Yeah, and slowly releasing those shoulders. Take it around for a spin, walking around, articulating through the feet. And even doing some of that backwards walking, maybe even some side, a little of that grapevine or karaoke. Just notice how the hips feel. Excellent. So let's go ahead and move that chair out of the way. Grabbing a drink again. And we're going to come to the floor. So we're going to do some stretching rotation, working into those deeper fascial lines. So we're going to have our feet a little wider than hip distance apart. And we're going to go ahead and lay down, making sure we've got room to stretch. So we're just going to let those legs go right to left, letting the hip come up. Just noticing what you notice. Neither good nor bad, just feeling through that motion. A few more each side. Right back here with those legs to the left, and we'll bring our attention to the right. So before we go to the left, bring those heels in towards the glutes, lift, and then slide the hips towards the right as we let the legs fall to the left. Taking the left hand, digging that elbow in, pressing the head into the floor, shifting the ribs. So we've got the shoulder blades flat as well. So now we're going to go through that whole firming up process. Bring our attention to the feet, spread the toes. Imagine putting the first, second, and third toe down, firming at the lateral side of the calf. And now imagine having that block, squeezing, firming up that lower extremity, all of the calf. You're pressing the lateral toes down. Now pulling the quads up, kneecaps up, and then pulling the heel to the glutes. And now crossing those hands, rolling the flesh back and pressing against the inner thigh. Now we add just the tiniest of tucks here. And then think of bringing your right ischial tuberosity towards the floor. That's going to help open up the hip across here. So now we're going to take our hands, that little touchdown position, thumbs together, lifting the arms up above the head. Taking your left arm, reach towards your right elbow, and then you're going to gently stretch that arm up above your head, feeling that stretch from the top of the hip up to that arm. So we've got all that firmness going on in the lower body. We're going to release the arm for just a moment, releasing some of that fascia. We're going to take that left leg, take it on top of the right leg. So we're not pushing to the floor, we're pushing away towards the wall. So that's going to help open up that hip a little bit. So we're pressing out and away, just like when we were pushing in towards the back of the chair. Bringing that right or left arm back onto the right arm, and we're going to stretch everything away from the hip. So from the hip down to the knee and from the hip up through the arm, feeling that stretch, that opening in the core, right around the abdominal musculature. Continuing to breathe, allowing that opening to happen. Nice long exhales. And on your next inhale, slowly allow that shoulder to recoil. So you're taking the tension off of that shoulder. Taking that left leg off the right leg. And then slowly rolling back up to center, releasing those arms back down by the side. And just rolling side to side, nice and slow. And again, just noticing what you notice. You may feel like you can rotate over to one side more because you're not having that pulling on that right side. So you can rotate more to the left. Excellent. All right, let's move to that left side opening. Bridging up, making a few adjustments here, walking those feet up towards the hips, a little wider. We're gonna lift the hips, shift the leg, or shift the hips over to that left side, and then let the legs fall over to the right. Using that right elbow, pressing the elbow and the head into the floor. Lift and shift so the shoulder blades are flat on the floor. You may already be feeling a little bit of a stretch just with that minor little movement. All right, bringing our attention to our feet, spreading out those toes. Think of putting that first, second, and third toe down, firming up that lateral calf. And now imagine squeezing that block between the calves. So we've got that whole lower extremity, all the calf engaged, relaxing those toes down, still keeping the firmness in the calf. Pulling those kneecaps up, firming up the quadricep. You're pulling the heels towards the glutes, firming up those hamstrings. Now imagining that compression and rotation of the flesh behind the thighs, opening up the back of the hips. Gently tucking the tailbone under, bringing that left ischial tuberosity towards the floor. So you feel that opening. Taking those little football hands, bringing them up above the head. Taking that right hand towards that left elbow, gently pulling it up and away from the head. Feeling that fascia stretch as we maintain that firmness in the lower body. Releasing the tension on that left arm, letting it recoil a little bit. We're going to take that right foot up onto that left leg. Again, remember, we're gently pulling away from the hip, not towards the floor, just away from the hip. So engage that stretch from the hip down to the knee towards the wall, and then slowly from the hip up the arm away from the head. You may feel a little bit of a tuck or a need to tuck. Just follow what your body's asking for. And on your next exhale, release that tension on the upper body, on the lower body, letting those tissues recoil back. Couple breaths, taking your time, letting the tissue come back. And releasing that right leg from that left leg. And slowly coming back to center. Releasing those arms down, hands on the ribs, and just taking the legs side to side. Again, just bringing your attention and your awareness back to those hips. Just notice what you notice. Notice if you now feel like you're a little more even. If you feel like one side is still a little tight, of course, you can always add more stretching later. Excellent. Walking those feet towards one another, we're going to gently lift the hips, putting the hands underneath the hips and just letting those legs come forward. Gently pressing our arms into the floor, opening up the front of the chest. Excellent. Releasing the chest, bringing those legs up again, feet on the floor, lifting the hips up off of the hands, and then walking the legs back down. Relaxing those hands on the abdominals, just taking your attention and your awareness into your breath, bringing your breath into your hands, into the lower lobes of your lungs as you breathe in. Relaxing into our Shavasana, making any adjustments that you need to, walking those shoulder blades underneath, maybe even wiggling the hips a little bit to settle into Shavasana. Bringing your attention and your awareness to the back of your body, allowing you to feel the sensation of your flesh from your heels to your calves, your hamstrings, your glutes, your mid back, your upper back, your shoulder blades, the back of your arms, and the back of your head, just allowing them to melt into the floor. On your next inhale, bring that right arm above the head and bring it back behind the neck to support that head. Using that left leg, shift your hips over and then find a comfortable position on the right body. Supporting that head and neck. You can either have your arm extended or having that elbow bent, whichever feels more comfortable to you. Keeping the eyes closed, using that top hand, using that left hand, push yourself up to a comfortable seated position. Now rub those palms together, creating a little bit of heat, still keeping those eyes closed. That nice seated position. Bringing some warmth to our palms. We're going to rest the heel of our palms on our cheekbones and using the warmth from a cupped hand to continue to relax those eyes. Relaxing those hands over the eyes, feeling the heat from our palms. Nice little cupped hands. Cupped enough that we don't feel our eyelashes on our palms. And as that heat starts to dissipate, slowly start to peek out Allowing those hands to kind of open, allowing that light in, allowing those eyes to gently come back into awareness, and then releasing those hands down to the knees. Slowly begin circling around those hip circles. Two more this direction. Excellent. And change your legs and change directions. And two more this direction. Excellent. Coming up, shrug those shoulders up and around, pressing to the front, rounding out through the spine. And up and around, pressing out to the side. And one more time, up and around, pressing to the back, opening through the shoulders, turning those hands over. Big breath in, breathing in one for the mind, exhaling to the side. Breathing in one for the body, exhaling to the other side. And breathing in one for the spirit, bringing the hands heart center. Namaste. Thank you for sharing your practice with me today. Have a fabulous evening.